So let's talk about some myths and facts about overdose. So, myth or fact, people collapse or drop immediately after injecting. This is a really common myth that we understand to be in the community. When we developed this training, we went through a lot of peer reviews, and this was something that people said that was true, that if somebody didn't drop immediately after injecting, they were going to be fine. The reality is that some do. However, an overdose can take place over 1 to 3 hours. One of the influencing factors on this might be that the person has mixed drugs. So they may have had a stimulant in their blood as well that was influencing their body's reaction to the substance. And when that wears off, then they're feeling the full effects of that overdose.
I know that I have overdosed with the needle still in my arm, and I've also overdosed several hours later. Purity and or taking too much of the drug are the main causes of overdose. So this is a myth. In fact, the main reasons of an overdose are mixing drugs, using when tolerance is low or absent, using alone, and being a long-term experienced user. The purity and taking too much of a drug is a factor, but they're not the main reasons of an overdose.
Okay, we're seeing a request here to take some questions. This might be a good time to just break and do that. So, Christine, will you moderate that?
Hi there, yeah. Oops, it's Kim. We're just getting a bit of feedback. Hi, everybody. So, questions. Are we able to open the lines at this point to take some questions? So I'm just looking in the chat and not seeing it right now, but let me just go down the side here. So if you have any chats, please, any questions, please type them into the chat area now. Perhaps you're seeing something that we aren't right now, Michael or Lindsay?
Okay. That's fine. If there's nothing at this point, we'll keep going and we'll respond to some questions at the end.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so the next myth that we're going to talk about is that the myth that being on methadone makes it impossible to overdose. So being on a methadone program will reduce the risk of overdose in the longer term. However, it's really important to note that in the first few days, the risk is actually higher while the body is still developing a tolerance to the methadone. And that even after being on a methadone program for a long time, it's still possible to overdose.
If the person doesn't die, they'll be all right. So this is a myth because there are several serious health effects that a person can be suffering from after an overdose, including broken bones, limb amputation, pneumonia, all those things that we did in fact talk about. Okay. Injecting cocaine or crack will stop an OD. So this is a myth. Injecting crack will actually make the OD happen faster as you are now mixing drugs, and you're also doing two different things to your heart, to your nervous system here, central nervous system. Your heart rate is speeding up with the crack, and heroin is slowing down your breathing, and you're not getting enough oxygen.
So another common myth is that if someone overdoses, you should walk them around. The basis for this one seems to be that you're trying to keep the central nervous system moving. You're trying to keep the person moving, keep the heart rate up by having them move around. The fact is that it's pretty much a waste of time. It's delaying a more appropriate response to an overdose. There's a chance that the person will fall, potentially adding a head injury into the mix. So then we'll be suffering from an overdose and a head injury.
Injecting salt water will stop an OD, so this is a myth. Injecting salt water or milk or water or orange juice or anything else is not going to stop an overdose. unless it's Narcan. It's all just going to add to the problem. And I think the basis behind this one is, you know, when somebody gets an IV and they go on a drip, they're getting a salt water drip. So that's, I think, where that comes from. If someone is snoring, they're okay. This is a myth. If someone's snoring, they're actually struggling for breath, especially when using depressants and opioids.
Another common myth is that if a friend overdoses, you should put them in the bath. There's a couple of challenges with this one. The first is that you can change the body temperature really fast and put them into shock. The person could drown, and it can be a slippery and wet nightmare trying to get an unconscious person out of a bathtub so that you can try to do CPR if that person stops breathing.
In the bathroom, everything is like really hard, so it's a really dangerous place to be if you went to a seizure, you know, and you're standing up in the bathtub and wet and now having a seizure.
So making someone vomit will slow down an overdose from down or depressants. This was a really common one that we heard as well. The rationale behind that is to try to get whatever the substances that they've taken out of their system. However, it's not in their stomach. By the time that they're feeling the effects of an overdose on their central nervous system that has slowed down their central nervous system to the point of failure, it's not in their stomach anymore, it's in their blood system, and it's in their brain. So having them vomit will really just increase the chances of them choking to death. And we know that depressants stop the gag reflex from working, which makes it much more likely that you'll choke. So this increases the risk of death quite significantly.